Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October the 1st, believe it or not, the 276th day of the year. There are 90 days left in the year 2024, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. Well, it's October. So what's happening in October? Well, actually, it's some pretty cool stuff going on in October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Bullying Prevention Month, and National Book Month. On the 5th of October, it's World Teachers Day. The 6th of October is one of my favorites, World Smile Day. The 10th is Indigenous Peoples Day. 16th is Bosses Day. And of course, the 31st is Halloween. We're 2 months from Christmas, a month and a half from Thanksgiving. There's a very important, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of the upcoming presidential election next month. And I encourage everyone out there to vote. I'll continue to remind you every week until the election. Tonight, there's a vice presidential debate. It'll be front and center. Check it out with your own eyes. Don't rely on those people who come on afterwards and tell you what you saw, because you know what you saw. See it with your own eyes, and then you can make up your own mind. Our G-list guest today is Kynesha Brown. Kynesha Brown has worked and volunteered as a volunteer organizer, a field organizer, and strategist with several local, state, and national political campaigns. She's worked for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Doug Jones, Stephen Reed, the city of Montgomery, who's Alabama's first elected Black mayor. Kynesha will discuss the controversial Project 2025 and what you should know as you do your research for your vote in the upcoming presidential election. We certainly look forward to that discussion. Our show today, of course, is sponsored by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Customizes the solution that fits your needs. So let's go to our roundtable and hear from Barbara Wallace-Edwards and Michael Walker. Good morning, Barbara Wallace-Edwards. How are you?
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing well this morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you. What's going on in your world?
Well, I can't believe it's October 1st already, Tom. Where's the year gone? It's hard to believe.
Oh, right, that's for sure.
Wow, it certainly has. Fall is here, and I'm still waiting on the fall weather to actually arrive. So I'm looking for some really cool mornings and days, pleasant days, and cool nights. So looks like maybe the last week of the really warm weather, and maybe some fall weather is going to creep in here next week.
Well, we hope so. We still got another month of hurricane season.
Yes, there's another one stirring out there right now. I think, Helene caused a lot of damage, and I pray for all of the people who were affected by that. I think there were over 100 people, I think, that have been found dead, and still several hundred that are still missing and unaccounted for. Some roads in Tennessee and North Carolina was washed out, and people were stranded on the highway, and it just really had a huge impact on that area. So my prayers are with those individuals that are affected by that.
The one, if you can call it a positive, is that they actually predicted exactly where it was going to go.
Yes.
But then they couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
Because it was so powerful and so strong.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's another one that's out there right now that's, I think they projected that it's going to hit Mexico in the coming days. So it is definitely hurricane season. We don't know how many more there's going to be coming up, but again, our prayers are with everyone that's affected by it.
Well, our good friend over in South Carolina, Antley says the power is back on over there.
Thank God.
But no internet.
Wow.
So good thing the power's on. I know the power was out in Savannah,
Mm-hmm.
where I lives, and you know, here's something people can do when the power goes out, and I discovered this when we had Hurricane Ivan back in 2004. If you have solar lights in your front yard,
Mm-hmm.
uh, solar lights that you use in your yard, and so on and so forth, when it gets dark, bring those lights inside,
That's smart.
and you'll be lit up inside. Now
Right.
that won't give you power to your refrigerators and so on and so forth.
Right.
We discovered that. Matter of fact, I went up and down the street telling everybody, if you got solar lights, put them in your house. And everybody was amazed and said,
Yes.
wow, I never thought of that.
I until you said it, I had never thought about that. That is amazing. Yeah, that is definitely works.
It works well. And you just bring them in, stick them in some plants or something.
Right.
Lights up the house. And
great idea.
Had sunshine all day.
Right. That's great.
It works. It does. What else you got there, Barbara?
Well, Tom, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you've heard Reggie Bush, the former USC running back who holds, his 2005 Heisman Award, was reinstated to him, but he is suing the NCAA, USC, and Pac-12 seeking compensation for use of his name, image, and likeness while he was with the program. In the suit, which was filed last Monday, Bush's lawyers alleged that all three entities made a lot of money off of the running back, who was an enormous star when he played with the Trojans. So I think there's some former players at Michigan that have done the same thing. You talked about you didn't get what $35 a month when you were in school. 15. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was giving you a raise. But there may be a chance that you all will get some compensation out of this. And I think it's rightly, that's the right thing to do, because again, you all put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and your bodies were mutilated basically on those fields, and you didn't get paid for it. So
no, we didn't.
It's unfair that you all had to make those type of sacrifices, and the players today are making millions of dollars in some cases for basically doing the same thing that you all did. So I hope that these guys are successful, and I hope it will become a class action suit, and all of you will receive some type of compensation.
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. I would, I think we probably should have some kind of compensation.
Absolutely.
They added on to the stadium while we were there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games while we were there.
Right.
We were certainly better than they are now.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely, especially at Auburn.
But we'll see how that goes. It's
right.
That would be fine. But I think I read a thing the other day about the NIL and the quarterbacks and how much money they're getting. And those kids are getting $1 million at the minimum.
Yes. Yes.
Things change. They change. But
they do.
I find it's kind of crazy that they're getting.
And I think.
Have you noticed they don't use the term student athlete anymore?
They do not. You're absolutely right. They don't.
Yeah.
There are several players that were talking about forming a union. So there's a lot of different things that are out there in the works right now. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. But again, I hope there's an opportunity for them to go back and do something for the former players who have given so much of themselves to make the schools a lot of money, to make the NCAA a lot of money, and the conferences.
I mean, I don't know. Luckily I'm somewhat comfortable, but I do think that just the amount of the way the game has gone now,
mm-hmm.
Not just the players getting paid, but the coaches making $5 million.
Oh wow! Yes.
And the basketball coaches are making $5 million.
Right.
So forth. And it's just a big business enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's built on young people who, you know, even if you're in NIL and even if you're getting that kind of money, what do you do with it?
Right.
Handle it? How do you manage it? Who works with you?
Exactly.
So forth. You know, last week we had Terry Knox, my friend,
Right.
and Terry was talking. I don't remember when Terry was working on tour duty. And Terry, I think at the time, was making like $700,000 or what have you. And I always told him, I said, man, you're just throwing this money away.
Right.
You got to be able to put some of this money up. So when you're where you are now, you've still got some things going on and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I just think that it's the wild, wild west.
It is.
It's kind of crazy, but I wish the kids well. And I don't know how you differentiate between who gets what.
Right.
That would be interesting to know. I'd love to know on Auburn's team who gets what.
And that's the one thing, it's not really public knowledge. Some people's, information is public and you know exactly what they're getting. And maybe that's because they're putting it out there. But in some cases, we have no idea who's getting money and how much they're getting.
Yeah, I'd just be interested. I'd love to know what the right tackle's getting versus the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in our case where the quarterback's throwing pick six interceptions every game.
Yeah. The other team should be having him on the NIL because he's making no money.
I think you'd probably get a lot of people agreeing with you from Auburn. So anyway, let's get Michael on here. Good morning, Michael Walker. I know how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning, TG. Good morning, Barbara. I hope both of you are doing well.
Good morning.
We'll let you chime in on that and go from there.
Michael, I'm sure you read the game Saturday. Yeah. You got him, Tom. You don't know what to say first.
He knows what to say. He just don't want to say it.
Hey. Yeah, my grandparents said if you don't have anything good to say about somebody, don't say anything about them at all. So I'm gonna move on from that. It's like whistling in the wind. One thing is interesting though. One of the prize recruits for the upcoming class, and Tom, we were talking about that. I said my concern is that if he doesn't show that they got a quarterback or something, it's going to turn off some recruits.
Right.
One recruit said that it's not affecting him negatively. He says they only missing one piece and everybody knows what it is.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And is that the quarterback, Michael?
No, this was a defensive end that said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that there's a young man that's a recruit that's a quarterback, and I think that he's trying to make a decision between Auburn and Notre Dame. And people were saying, he should choose Auburn because it's obvious to him where the missing link is, and he'll come to Auburn. He could probably start as a freshman.
Well, you say that, and I would hope that would be true. And you're right. It's Deuce Knight, I think is his name.
Yes.
And he's been coming to Auburn for 4 or 5 straight home games and stuff. And everybody expects him to flip. And so we'll see. But what bothers me, though, is when you talk about that situation, Robbie Ashford said Hugh Freeze never worked with him on throwing mechanics. Wow. He also said it was not a fair competition, which we all could see that with our eyes.
Right.
Our lying eyes told us that it wasn't a fair competition between he and Thorne. And It's so funny that they tried to say that Thorne could run the ball also, but I went back and looked at the stats from Saturday. On 17 carries or more, he averaged 1.4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
So that doesn't seem like there's somebody that can run the ball.
Right. Yeah, that was their excuse for, playing him versus Brown, I think. And yeah, he's not doing very well in the running category either.
Yeah. I want to switch. Let me change the conversation. I ran across a story that I found to be extremely disturbing and disheartening, but it goes back to what's going on right now. The Department of Justice launched an investigation into a Mississippi police department that violates the rights of Black residents. It's a town by the name of Lexington, Mississippi. is 76% Black. The investigation was launched because of local attorneys and activists making it known that there were things going on in the city. And then there was a recording of the town's former police chief, Sam Dommins, about bragging on shooting a Black man 119 times.
Yeah.
And they caught him on tape, and his words are, I quote, "I shot the N-word 119 times, okay?" Dobbins was heard saying on a recording where he also claimed he had killed 13 people while on duty.
Mm.
The investigation found that the police department unlawfully discriminates against Black people. U.S. Attorney General Kristen Clark said at a press conference, there's 1,200 citizens there, 76% of Black. And it concluded that it's just the second on the town since 1963 where they have been found liable for intimidating Black people to vote as far as voting. This is something else that's really interesting. The day the investigation was launched, Lexington police officers chased down and stunned a Black man with a taser until he foamed at the mouth, according to the police report. The police had arrested him multiple times for minor incidents over previous month. And the report noted officers had kept him in jail because he could not afford to pay the fines. And these are minor infractions. Especially for a person in poverty, these fines are no small thing. You know, if you get a speeding ticket and you don't have any money, hey, that's like a death sentence almost for you, especially right there. Right. This is what's going on, and the DOJ has just concluded an investigation on this. And people want to, and granted, there are good cops, there are bad cops, but it's disproportionate what happens to people.
Like all the bad ones in Mississippi.
Yeah, a lot. I was going to say Mississippi and Alabama has they're an abundance of those bad ones, don't they?
Seems that way, particularly in the South. It does. I just found that to be unbelievable.
And you say it's Lexington, Mississippi, Michael?
Yes, Lexington, Mississippi.
I've not heard of that city.
I think that's why when Tariq Hill had his incident, I think that's why people were saying, let the window down, man. Mm-hmm. You know, because you can lose your life if you run up on the wrong situation.
Yes.
And it isn't that who's in the right and who's in the wrong. It's a matter of surviving this particular incident, because you can sometimes not survive it.
Yes.
Survive 100 and some times. Damn.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so interesting how different the judicial system works for some and works against others, in other words. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be fair and balanced. You know, that's what the blindfold on for Lady Justice. But it seems that's not the case. And I read an article that made a lot of sense to me. It said, why is it that the pro-lifers didn't care anything about the life of Marcellus Khalif Williams, the man that I talked about from Missouri, where the prosecutors have said this man is innocent? There's evidence that show he was not involved. But instead, you've got a pro-life governor in Missouri, Mike Parson, the Missouri Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused to intervene to save this man's life. But yet and still, they're pro-lifers.
No, they're not. No, they're not, Michael. They're not pro-life.
Well, they say they are.
Yeah, I understand. They say they are. They're supposed to be Christians as well.
Yeah.
But they're not.
But they would now.
Their actions say something different.
Now, the victim's own family begged them, this man is innocent. Spare his life. The prosecutors, everybody, these people went on and would not grant a stay of execution.
The witnesses changed their story as well, right? I understand that there were witnesses who said they spoke incorrectly. He wasn't the man that was guilty, and they still chose to.
What was the governor's take on this? The governor could have commuted it, right?
Right. Yes. He didn't. And what's ironic is the former governor created a panel to look into it and investigate it. But, because the term limit, he was no longer there. So the new governor decided he disbanded the panel. Yeah. Much like Trump disbanded the panel that Obama left him about the coronavirus, because they had already said this is coming. They had gotten it from George Bush, and Obama passed everything on to Trump, and he disbanded it. So, and speaking of Trump and the judicial system, it's interesting that he has these felonies, but turns out he can vote for himself, because in the state of Florida, you're unable to vote if you have been convicted of a felony, but it's based on what state you were convicted in.
Wow.
And the laws of that state. So because New York City will allow a convicted felon to vote as long as they are not in prison. So because Trump has not been sentenced and been put in prison, he's allowed to vote in Florida based on New York laws, but he's a resident of Florida.
Well, yeah, he was going to find a way. They were going to find a way to let him vote anyway, Michael. But he's only one vote, so the rest of us get out and vote too.
Well, Tommy Tuberville votes somewhere, and he doesn't even live where he votes.
Right. He doesn't live where he's serving the people, supposedly serving the people.
And Tommy Tuberville and Herschel Walker were in the suite with Trump.
Herschel was there too?
Yes. Herschel was standing back there in the background.
We hadn't seen much of Herschel since the elections where
Herschel was seen back on the University of Georgia campus finishing up that degree that he said he finished in the top 2 or 3% of the class in.
Ooh, boy.
You mean he doesn't have a degree yet, Michael?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure he hadn't graduated yet, because if he had, I'm sure it would have been written about,
Exactly.
That's funny. Let's we lost a couple of people yesterday. One of them I was kind of fond of, and that was the Dikembe Mutombo.
Yes.
Passed. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He was a good guy, my boy.
Yes.
And I remember he used to be trying to guard Shaq. And Shaq would just throw that weight around and knock him out of bounds and stuff, but he never backed down.
Right.
And then Pete Rose passed.
Yes.
A great baseball player.
Charlie Hustle, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we certainly wish their families well, and hopefully they've gone on to something better.
Tom, do you think Pete Rose should be allowed in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be some kind of way where if you hit that number of hits, now there's some kind of way you can maybe put an asterisk by his name or something.
Right.
But he hit the ball. I mean, in the same way with Barry Bonds, cut it out, man. Let him. You could put him in the Hall of Fame with parentheses. He bet on baseball.
Right.
Okay. So I do think he should be in there. I do. Charlie Hustle and Barry. I mean, there was nothing more exciting than Barry hitting that ball out there in the water. Yeah. We went to see Actually, it was on our honeymoon. We had driven up the coast to California, and we got to San Francisco, and we decided we'd go see the Giants play. And so we bought some tickets off this guy outside the stadium and went down, man, and we were like 10 rows behind home plate.
Wow.
And Barry came out to bat, and these two guys, they said they had come from New York. They were just, come on, Barry. Man, we've been out here. We've been sitting out here. It's cold out here. You ain't hit a home run yet. Come on, Barry. Hit us a home run. And Barry turned around, looked at him, and grinned. You know, it was great. I don't know. Let I think you should let them in, and if you want to put some asterisk by their name, put an asterisk by their name. Right. But to not let them in is I don't know. I think it's a little bit crazy.
Yeah. Well, you notice now, like Reggie Bush situation, he's going back to challenge for past compensation.
Right.
And supposedly the reason why he was banned and kicked out and lost his Heisman was because he took impermissible benefits while a college player.
Right.
Now those benefits it's legal now.
Yes.
It's nothing. Okay. What he got is nothing now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Considering what's going on now. Which I can't understand why Hugh Freeze wouldn't go into the portal and pay $1 million to get a good quarterback. That's what he got suspended from Ole Miss for, was doing that when it was illegal.
Right.
Now it's legal and he won't go pay to get a quarterback.
Maybe he shell shocked from when it was I don't know. I'm sure he's got his reasons, but Thorne.
We would like to know, inquiring minds would like to know what those reasons are, Tom.
Well, Thorne is not the answer.
No, he's not. We're going to be lucky to win another game this year.
Okay. Anything else? Let's go to Sean. She's got a minute, and then we'll get to our G list. Sean?
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute. Hello, October. Tell me all the things. We have officially stepped into the holiday season, and man, oh man, do I love this time of the year. Speaking of this time of the year, did you know that October of 1985 was when Lynette Woodward, captain of the gold medal winning U.S. Olympic women's basketball team, became the first female player for the Harlem Globetrotters? Woodward traveled with the Globetrotters for 2 years and was presented with a Legends Ring in 1996, which was the team's most prestigious honor. In 2004, Woodward was enshrined in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Great. So if she set some kind of records or something, we supposed to put an asterisk and say, well, it was a woman? So let's go to the G list. Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesday with Tom, we have the G list. And our G list guest today is Kynesha Brown. Kynesha Brown has worked and volunteered as a volunteer organizer, a field organizer, and a strategist with several local, state, and national political campaigns, including for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Doug Jones, and Stephen Reed, the first elected Black mayor of Montgomery. Let's get Kynesha on. Kynesha, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I hope you are.
Doing well. Can't complain.
Good deal. Well, tell us a little bit about your background before we get into what you're going to tell us.
Okay. I'm born and raised here in Montgomery, Alabama. I always tell my people I am a country girl. My folks are from Lowndes County, Haynesville, Alabama, which sits in between Selma and Montgomery. So just growing up, hearing my grandmother and my aunts talk, I always learned about civil rights movement and things like that. So that's kind of how I've gotten my start into civic and voter engagement work. Graduated high school here in '99, then went on to Auburn University, War Eagle. And I've been back, and I went to Georgia for a little while and then came back to Montgomery and been back to Montgomery since 2008. I started a program called Roam to the Polls Voting Initiative, which was founded back in 2016, which really kind of started more so as a voter registration arm. But as we started going out into neighborhoods, we saw that there were deeper issues that we needed to address, which included helping system impacted people getting their voting rights restored, also voter education, mobilization, because the easiest thing is to get people registered to vote. The big thing is to actually get them to the polls to go vote. That and then going to our name roll to the polls, getting them to the their polling location on election day, where we pick them up, take them to vote, and we'll take them back home if they need transportation services.
Okay, good deal. Barbara, what's your question?
Good morning, Kynesha. Thank you for joining us. And
Good morning.
Project 2025. I had to say that inside. Where do we think this thing started, and who's behind it? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, to get a small synopsis of what Project 2025 is. I know people have been seeing like little graphics and things on social media, but it's actually a 922-page document with 5 sections and 30 chapters of things of how to infiltrate the federal government piece by piece. I can't say exactly when the discussion started for them to compile this information, but I can say it's different groups and organizations. A lot of those people that were contributors to Project 2025 actually served on under Trump's administration when he was president. And when I say some, 6 of them were cabinet members. That includes Ben Carson, Paul Daines, Peter Hasselhoff, all those people included. And I think it has been a total of 100 plus of employees under his administration that has contributed to this. So I know a lot of what we've been seeing lately in the media is that Trump has not been saying that he has any ties to Project 2025. He doesn't know anything about it. Very well may be true, meaning that he don't know what's in the document, but it's hard to dispel that he doesn't have a connection to Project 2025 when basically the people that he appointed or were employed during his administration are the top contributors of it. And then also I would tell people too, if they're still a little confused about whether Trump has any involvement to Project 2025, they can simply look on his website and look under his political platform, Agenda 47, and they will see similarities between the two. So as much as people try to dispel it, is more correlation than it is not. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Can you, before I go, while you're at there, can you tell us some of the things that are in the plan? Yes.
And like I say, it's 5 different sections, 30 chapters that talk about everything as what my grandma used to say, from the rooter to the tutor, in terms of like federal government. It talks about how it wants to eliminate the Department of Education and take away federal funding for Title I schools. It also talks about eliminating certain agencies like Environmental Protection Agency, NOAA, that is responsible for the National Weather Service, as well as tracking hurricanes. Like we're seeing the devastation that's going on currently in North Carolina, Tennessee, and around that area. Agencies that are responsible for that, and also streamlining the FBI. That is just like kind of scratching the surface of what's in Project 2025. It will also really eliminate Housing and Urban Development Office, to where it will make harder for people to get housing aid, especially if it's determined that they have a resident living with them that may be a dreamer immigrant, where they were born into the United States, but their parents may be considered non-citizens, or if they're living with actual non-citizens, and also kind of eliminating different civil service positions as well. And that's just a small glimpse of it. This is something that really can be talked about days on out, because like I said, it's a 900 plus page document.
Okay. Michael, you got a question?
Well, yes, I have several. Let me start with this one, though.
Mm-hmm.
The things that you just mentioned that Project 2025 would like to eliminate,
Mm-hmm.
to me, they seem like all things that are necessary to consistently move the country forward and things that
Mm-hmm.
the country needs. Like, for instance, I thought I heard you say eliminate funding for tracking the weather systems and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand the thought process of getting rid of things that basically contribute to the better quality of life and safety of the citizens. Are they
Mm-hmm.
looking at this from a standpoint that it's too expensive to do these things and we're going to save X amount of dollars if we were to eliminate that? Or what's their thought process behind it? Because you're causing if you're saving money by getting rid of it, it's going to cost more money on the other side because you didn't prevent things
Mm-hmm.
that became catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think the saving money piece is like a small component of their positioning for doing this document. But a lot of it is to really say they don't see these things as issues. For example, this is a document that has been put together from a lot of conservative organizations and think tanks. And one of the talking points of those conservative think tanks and organizations is that they don't really believe too much into climate change. And if we've been paying attention to what we've been seeing over the past few days with Hurricane Helene, climate change is very real. And I mean, just to put it in layman's terms, we're talking about areas that are 300 plus miles away from our ocean line, to areas that sit actually on high mountains. And we saw a hurricane literally wipe these towns out and take out roads. So that's a simple example of what climate change. Also, in terms of the Department of Education, a lot of the conservative groups do not feel that federal government should have a say-so in terms of education and public education. And what really kind of bothers me with that is because how Project 2025 is selling itself is that it's just supposed to be an attack to reverse things that are leaning to people who are more Democratic or liberal aligned. But there are a lot of proposals in Project 2025 that will also adversely impact those who are considered conservative, especially those who are conservative in rural areas. Case in point, the Title I funding that I mentioned earlier. They want to eliminate Title I funding, which is federal funding that help low-income children. Well, most of the states that benefit greatly from Title I funding are conservative-led states like Alabama, like Mississippi, like Louisiana, like Kentucky. So if they eliminate Title I funding under this proposal, it's going to greatly adversely impact those schools in those rural areas, who are pretty much highly conservative areas. So a lot of things on the surface may seem like, oh, well, it's not a big thing, it's not a big factor, but it's going to greatly impact all of us. And pretty kind of go into the tune that you're cutting off your nose to spite your face on a lot of issues as well.
Yeah.
How much of it adversely will affect people of color?
I would say greatly. And I know sometimes people will seem that as an over exaggeration, but I always think of just thinking of the different things that they're talking about in this document. It pretty much is going to impact the Black community in every point of every which way, because we know someone who works on the federal level. We know someone who's dealing with reproductive health issues. We know someone who's in public education, or we know people who are attending schools that are eliminating DEI initiatives. These things all greatly impact us as a Black community, especially on the health sense and reproductive health, quality of life issues. Here in Alabama, we've seen a consistent closing of medical centers and rural hospitals in our rural areas in Black Belt, to where people have to drive 60 to 75 miles just to get adequate health care. under these provisions, then Project 25 is also going to make it harder for people to still seek those health services. They're already struggling trying to get to adequate medical services driving 60 plus miles. But if some of these provisions are rolled away under Project 2025, it's going to make it even harder. They also, one other thing that's going to be in the proposal is actually they're going to remove any kind of data collection for race-based discrimination, meaning they're going to take away any kind of race-based mechanism for employment and any kind of factors that deal into federal government. And I'm a big stickler of saying, some people may say, well, that doesn't seem like a big issue. It's 2024. These may not be big issues anymore. But no, it was a reason why it was put into place in the first place. So reversing that will also greatly impact us. And I know, Michael, you mentioned earlier about what was going on currently in Mississippi with the DOJ investigation to the Mississippi Police Department. Well, there are also provisions in Project 2025 that will streamline some of the workings of DOJ to where they won't have that provision to overlook police departments and law enforcement that are doing misconduct. Any kind of police misconduct or anything like that, they will take the provisions away from that. So what we know in terms of mass incarceration, health disparities that greatly adversely impact us as a Black communities, these things are going to greatly adversely impact us even more when these provisions are removed.
Barbara?
Yeah, I think you all have brought up some interesting points today. People look at it as DEI and a lot of the mandates that are in Project 2025 basically affecting people of color, but it also affects people that are just poor, regardless of their color. Mm-hmm. And that's where people are not understanding that. There's a lot of people who are behind this and supporting people like Trump, who's going to basically implement Project 2025 on day one of his administration. Mm-hmm. They don't realize how it's going to impact them and hurt them as well. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they can't see it unless they just don't know what's there. They don't understand all the ins and outs of this Project 2025. How can the message get out more other than us doing things like this, having these type of discussions? Is what did you suggest people do to make sure that people are aware of what's included in Project 2025?
Yeah, I was like, I didn't want to sound cliche and redundant, but yes, vote and just becoming active and proactive into the process. I work also in comms and PR, and what I tell people also to check the sources and research, because the devil is in the details. And a lot of times they tell us, if you want to put information somewhere, put it in the book, because we don't read it, right? But the information is up there, the full documents there. You can go to project2025.org to look at the bulleted points as well as the full 922-page document and all that enclosed. Keep talking about it and also checking your sources. A lot of times social media is good in getting fast and instant information, but at the same time, social media can be a bad place because it opens the window of people to put out and post anything. So whereas people are taking more viral posts as fact and they're not paying attention to media and actual journalism of the matter. So keep talking about it, keep voting. What I tell people, always pay attention and be included in the process, because all elections are important. It's not just the presidential election. And it's not that we should just also pay attention to what's going on at a federal level. Even on a local level in Alabama, there are laws that have been passed that have been put, and people get reactive to it instead of paying attention to it beforehand. And we get a little upset now this is in place when we could have been a more active voice to prevent it. But some of the things that are in Project 2025 have already kind of trickled down on the local level. If you've been paying attention to what's been going on with a lot of the library boards in Alabama, how they're trying to scrutinize and criticize books that are in public libraries and how they're trying to overtake those boards, that's an indication of some things that are in Project 2025. Also, when we're talking about voting rights, making it harder for people to vote, especially those who are systemically impacted, meaning those who have been convicted, who may have had a felony conviction. They served their time, they've gotten their voting rights restored. But there has been a law that was passed on the last legislative cycle, HB 100, that will kind of reverse and roll back some of those people who have originally gotten their voting rights restored to where they'll lose their rights again. Now, the silver lining is that a stay was placed last week as a result of the Alabama State NAACP and Greater Birmingham Ministries, where they had an injunction that was placed to where the law would not take effect until November 6th after the election, which is good because it gives those people a chance to vote, but they may not be able to vote again. Right. And the number of the people that it will impact will be in the thousands of people who will lose their voting rights. And they may not even be notified that they have lost their voting rights. So things like that, even with the state legislation with DEI, we saw how that's trickled down into our university systems and public institutions with that. So a lot of things we're looking at from a high level on a federal level. There are really some things that are state and local that are happening that we also need to pay attention to. And I cannot stress enough to vote, research, and vote. Yes. Don't vote because somebody's telling you to vote or who to vote for. Vote on your issues and vote for your democracy. Simply put, we really have to vote.
Thank you.
Yeah. I haven't been involved in local elections. You're absolutely right. The local elections are more important than the national election in terms of its immediate effect on your life locally.
And then I want to add too, while we're speaking on local levels, it's still kind of on a federal standpoint, but I know a lot of conversations has been centered around for president, but the congressional elections are just as important going into November because we can have the president that we want in place, but if they don't have a good Congress or a Senate, they're not going to be able to push anything that they want through. And right now, all congressional races are important. But right now, where I sit in Montgomery, I'm part of Congressional District 2. And that's going to be a very pivotal election for November, because one that will flip a seat in the Congressional District 2. And this was also a result of the Supreme Court hearing of Allen v. Milligan, which made it to where Congressional District 2 is an opportunity district for Black voters. It has changed the electorate in this district to about 48.7% of Black voting age population. So they will have a better chance of getting someone elected that better represent them, which will be good. But a lot of people don't realize that the court case isn't finalized. An appeal has been signed and it goes back to the Supreme Court in February. So it would be ideal to have someone reflective of that Black voting age population. So when they go back to Supreme Court in February, they have to say, okay, this is a result of what we did for that case. So,
okay. Anybody else got, Michael, you got any more questions?
Yes, Kynesha, I just like to understand what's their overall goal. You said the economics of it was just a small part of it. What are they trying in their mind? What do they hope to accomplish by implementing such practices? What are they thinking that this is going to do for America? How do they justify it?
What they justify, and I hate to sound really cliche, but going back into the slogan of where they're saying "Make America Great." When that slogan first hit, the question was, okay, to some, they was like, well, when was America great? What time are you referring to where you want it to be considered great? And where we're talking about a goal from based on my assertion of reviewing the document, it's pretty much to roll back everything that we have accomplished over years. And that's just for not just Black people, but people of color, different things that we're talking about in terms of like issues and democracy, just that normalcy. They want to roll back all of that. And this was just based on the Project 2025 is just simply based on what I call cultural war rhetoric. The things that have been used as scare tactics and fear mongering from to conservative groups in terms of like what they're calling woke language, which was something that was taken from liberal talking points and kind of turned into an attack word, are things that are put into Project 2025. Things that we're seeing currently right now that's been happening against Haitian immigrants. Those scare tactics in terms of people, non-citizens crossing the border and they're attacking our communities or taking our jobs. Those scare tactics like that, they're fear mongering so they can put things back to the way that they were.
It's even like with Obamacare. I mean, he says he's going to get rid of it, but what are you going to replace it with?
There's nothing.
Well,
Yeah.
we're working on
concept.
that.
Right. A concept of a plan.
A concept.
Which means
And you know,
nothing.
some people may view Project 2025 as a concept, but to me, I don't think anybody's sitting around just making a 922-page document just to say they're making a 922-page document.
Oh no.
So I don't think it should not be taken lightly at all.
They
What
definitely
role
have a
did Ben
plan.
Carson play in this? You mentioned that he was a part of the group.
Yeah, he was one of the authors of Project 2025.
I read a quote from Thurgood Marshall that he said, when I'm gone, they'll probably replace me with another black person, but he won't be black.
Right.
That was his quote for the Ben Carsons. And
we know who replaced him. He was absolutely correct.
But you know what they say, all skin folks ain't kinfolk.
Yeah.
Well, Clarence Thomas is who replaced him, right? So that's who we're talking about. He may be black in color, but he's not really black.
I think Zora Neale Hurston said it best, like all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's right.
Well, I do think that I go back to growing up in Birmingham. Our congressman was a white man. I can't think of his name right now, but we had a district in Birmingham that was probably 35% black. So this guy couldn't get elected without the black folks. Well, then he was a Republican. John Buchanan was his name. When Buchanan went out, Ben Erdrich came in. He was a Democrat. Well, we went from having 35% of the vote to having a black district that runs pretty much north of the state down to Montgomery. And I just feel like, to be honest, I know the people who were involved in this, and they got pissed off at me because I said I didn't think it was smart. When you can control 4 or 5 congressmen, I don't care if they're white or black, you got some say-so in whether or not they get elected.
Right.
And now you don't. And so I think that you got to be smarter. And then the other thing, when I was talking about local elections, my wife ran for the city council down here. She won. But there were people in this community who had never voted, and nobody had ever asked them to vote. Nobody in their church had gone to them and talked to them about voting and so on and so forth. And they didn't even know how. And so I told them, I'll come pick you up and take you to the polling place so that you can vote. And you think, how can you be in this 21st century and you've never voted?
Right.
And so I think this election, I know we're talking about the national election here. We got to get people out there to vote, man.
Absolutely.
We do.
Even if you have to pick them up in your car and take them.
Right.
Exactly. And I mean, it really starts, and going back to your point, when I first started doing this work, keep in mind, my people are from Lowndes County, Hannibal, heard all those stories. So when we started going out in neighborhoods, just asking people, they were ready the election, they're ready to vote. We heard people, even older people, saying, well, I don't care about voting. That ain't my thing. And, of course, my first reaction was, what do you mean you don't vote? People die for your right to vote. Right. But I had to change my talking point in that, because I grew up hearing that all my life. So it was ingrained to me, understanding that people died for my right to vote, whereas not everyone is astute to that connection. So it's more so understanding why they don't vote, because a lot of times some of them get discouraged because they have someone that's running for office and they come to their church, they speak about, asking for their vote, kiss some babies. Once they get elected, they disappear. They don't hear from them anymore. Or the things that they said that they was going to do, fixing those issues in their neighborhood or whatever, they got elected and they just kind of abandoned them. So it's just more so also having the conversation to make it relational to them. Also saying, in addition to voting people in, you can vote people out that you don't like. And I think we have to kind of share that message as well. But yes, picking up people, taking them to the polls, because a lot of times people don't realize that transportation is considered a luxury to some. Not everyone has means to transportation to go vote. And a lot of times people don't go vote because they don't have a way to get there. And that's where groups like us run to the polls. That's where we come in, to where we go pick up people, be it in a church van, be it in a vehicle. We pick them up. We'll have some snacks for them on the way if they need it. Take them to go vote. We wait for them to vote, do what they got to do. We take them back. And they're very appreciative of that. So having those conversations gets more people motivated to vote. Instead of telling people to vote, we ask them to vote, and then we make it kind of nice why we want them to vote, and then ask those hard questions. So yes, it just starts with conversation, getting them there.
I was working with a volunteer group one time to get people out to vote, and ran across an elderly person who said they didn't vote, had never voted, and asking them why. The person broke down and started crying and said they couldn't read. They were embarrassed to go to the polls because they never learned how to read and write.
Yep.
They didn't know how to read the ballot. So what we did is got a sample ballot, went through it with them, walked through it with them, said, this is how it's going to look. Here's who, tell me who you want to vote for, and I'll show you where it is on the ballot. And so those type of things we don't even think about that could be happening today, because there's still a lot of young people who unfortunately didn't learn to read and write. They either quit school or this was passed on and never really learned how. So those type of things, we have to really work with them and talk with people and figure out why they're not voting, and then try to help them.
And not to deviate too much away from the main subject, but to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, non-voters don't necessarily have a look, right? We always, well, I'm not going to say we as a collective, but a lot of times I hear a lot of criticism towards young people about why they're not voting and why they're not engaged. Yeah, it's some young people that are not engaged, but just as there are young people that are not engaged, there are some older people or people my age who are also not engaged. So it's not like when we see those percentages of non-voters, they're not just young voters, they're a collective of different people. Why are they not voting? What's the dynamics that ties into that? And like you're saying, a lot of people may feel embarrassed because they can't read. They may be considered low literacy, or no one has never really asked them to vote. It just goes back to different things. No one maybe needs to sit down and vote. And even though we feel like people have to by any means, I believe like everybody should vote by any means necessary, but it is your constitutional right, just like it is your constitutional right to bear arms. Even though it's your constitutional right to bear arms, some people choose to bear arms, some people don't. Just like some people choose to vote and some people don't. But it's like our fight or our cause to make sure we get those people who are not choosing not to vote to make sure they do actually vote. So,
and I think we can understand better older people. And I'm talking about older than me,
right?
Older people who don't. But my dad had to take the test, the poll tax test, and they told him he failed, and so he didn't get to vote until he came back and could pass the test, which is one way of keeping people from voting. But now younger people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't know. If they knew what people went through to get the right to vote, then maybe they wouldn't be so against the vote. So
and I will say sometimes it takes a little tugging, a little extra motivation for the young people. But on the silver lining, I will say voter registration has increased nationwide upward of 400% among young voters. So the momentum has shifted to where they're getting more engaged. So hopefully we'll see those same tangibles pull out on election day too.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we can get this election over and the right person wins, and then we can go back into the courtroom and get Fannie Willis back on her case.
Yes.
And fight. There we go. There we go.
We can get that solved. Okay. Anybody got anything else?
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great conversation.
Kynesha, we appreciate it very much.
Look, thank you for having me. And if y'all have any more questions about voting or anything like that, y'all know how to reach me. Happy to help. We got to reach any and everybody between now and November 5th.
Well, we might get you back before November the 5th. Then.
Let me know. I'll be happy to come.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very
much.
All right. Y'all have a good one.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, very interesting. My closing comment for today, or as I see it, is we survived another hurricane last week. We were on the right side of this hurricane, or the good side, if that's even possible, of a very destructive hurricane. People were calling, asking us how we were, and so on and so forth. And if you're on that, I guess, left side of it, in this case, we got very little wind, very little rain in comparison to what happened on the other side of the hurricane. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those who lost loved ones and who lost property due to Hurricane Helene. If you've ever been through one, it's an awesome thing. We went through Hurricane Ivan, which basically just took half of our backyard away. It didn't destroy the house, but it destroyed the yard and all the stuff that's out over the water, the dock and all that. And so we're always on the alert. We're always ready. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those who lost their loved ones. A lot of people died. There's another month left in hurricane season. We'll offer up our thoughts and our prayers for everybody, for our thoughts and our prayers as we ride out the rest of this hurricane season. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. We want to thank Kynesha Brown for all of her wisdom and knowledge regarding voting and what's upcoming election. Don't forget tonight, there is the debate between the vice president, presidential candidates for the Republican and Democratic Party. Hopefully there won't be any more lies flying around about the Haitians and so on and so forth, although there might. Lying doesn't seem to be a big thing these days. A lie gets you something. I don't know what it gets you, but anyway, that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. We want to thank our guest, Kynesha Brown. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl. Excuse me. Thanks again to TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this October the 1st. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. If you've got an extra one, give one to someone today. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.